Can you lend me $300,000 to buy a house, Mom? I want us to start over. I still remember how I froze when I heard that question come through the phone. The way it was said, casual, light, as if 26 years of absence, as if the years I lived in solitude had never existed. I was standing in the kitchen, still holding a steaming coffee mug. The window was cracked open, letting in the early spring breeze, faintly scented with flowers. The world outside was strangely peaceful, yet inside me, the oldest storm roared back to life, fiercer than ever. My son's voice, Andrew's, familiar yet foreign. He was 46, but to me, the last image was still of a 20-year-old in the courtroom, not even glancing back as his father led him away. Just one look back. He didn't give me that. And now, after all those years, he suddenly calls, with a voice sweet and full of remorse. But then, almost immediately, he cuts to money. $300,000. The price of a reunion. I gave a faint laugh, one only I could hear. $500,000 in compensation from an unjust lawsuit years ago. The money I'd just received. A new door to a free life, or so I thought. Yet before I could step through, the shadow of the past stood there, hand outstretched for a share. I set the coffee mug on the table. My palms were clammy with sweat. Not because I begrudged the money, but because my heart, the one torn apart the day I lost my son, was facing the pain I'd spent nearly 3 decades stitching back together. I asked, my voice so calm it surprised even me. You want me to lend you $300,000 just to start over? Andrew went quiet for a few seconds. Then he rushed to explain that it was a new chance for both of us, that he wanted me in his life, that a new house would be the foundation for a reunited family. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. No apology for 26 years of silence. No question about how I'd lived, what I'd endured. Just promises, dazzling visions, if I'd open my wallet. And in that moment, I grasped a bitter truth. He hadn't come back for love. He'd come back for my bank account balance. Once again, I wasn't a mother, just a convenient door to knock on when something was needed. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the old pain surge up, silent, then ebb away like a tired wave. When I opened them, I knew I was no longer the lenient mother of 26 years ago. Never again. I once thought the greatest pain in a woman's life was a cheating husband. But no, the greatest pain is losing a child and still having to live on, day after day. Back then, Richard and I had been together for over a decade. I wasn't rich or powerful, just an ordinary housewife, scraping by for the family, raising Andrew with every ounce of love I had. And he, the man who'd held my hand and vowed under the church's vault, chose to betray me when I was at my weakest. Richard had another woman, younger, more beautiful, and wealthier, from a family with influence I could never touch. The divorce was swift, cold, like a business transaction. I walked into the courtroom with empty hands and a bleeding heart, while he hired a team of expensive lawyers, smirking as I couldn't afford decent representation. I didn't have the money to fight. No assets to seize a chance. And so I lost custody, not because I was unfit, but because I was poor. I remember the moment Andrew, the baby I'd held since he was born, was led out of the courtroom. I called his name. I waited for a glance, a hesitant step, but he didn't look back. I turned to stone in the absolute chill of that afternoon. They say time heals all wounds. But wounds from family, they don't heal. They just quietly fester in your heart, bit by bit. I lived quietly for the next 26 years, a shadow in my own life. No weddings, no vacations, no family holiday gatherings. Just silent springs passing by my window, endless winters with an empty dining table. I took every job I could, kitchen assistant, cleaner, sales, even grueling night shifts to cover rent, electricity, water. No one knew that every night before bed, I still whispered goodnight to my son, though I no longer knew where he was, what he did, or if he even remembered me. The letters I sent, full of clumsy questions, small stories I'd gathered all day just to write to him, vanished into the void, unanswered. Later, I learned Richard had hidden them, never giving them to Andrew. At 60, after decades of quiet, persistent litigation, The court finally acknowledged the injustice of that trial. They awarded me $500,000, a patchwork attempt to mend losses no money could truly fix. Holding that check, I broke down. Not for the money, but because I thought, at last, I could start anew. No one could take from me anymore. No one could force me to beg or suffer in silence. I planned my new life. A cross-country trip, the art classes I'd always dreamed of, leisurely mornings on a beach with just me, the wind, and the waves. I thought, finally, the years of humiliation were behind me. From now on, only light and freedom. But life never lets me off that easily. Just weeks after the compensation news broke, my phone, used for years only to call plumbers or book doctor's appointments, rang. And on the other end was a voice both foreign and achingly familiar. Andrew. Not a greeting, not a mom, but a request. $300,000. For a house, for a new start. A price for a bond that should never have been measured in any currency. We met at a small cafe in town, a place where women my age, over 60, often sat chatting about trivial things. A peaceful place. At least until that day. Andrew walked in, hands in his pockets, shirt unbuttoned at the top, as if pretending this was just a casual meeting. When our eyes met, I saw it instantly. He was uneasy, hesitant, but not remorseful. Perhaps he thought a greeting, a perfunctory question, and then the proposal would make everything revert to before the 26-year gap. He sat down, placed his phone on the table, gave an awkward smile, and launched into talk of a new opportunity for us both. How? It's time we rebuild our family. How? I want you close to me and the grandkids. How? You'll be happy seeing me settled. You'll be proud. It sounded beautiful. But throughout the entire conversation, not a word about the 26 years of absence. Not a question. How have you been? Not a single. I'm sorry for what you went through. Just clever, sugar-coated words steering toward the dream house. And a small loan, $300,000, to help our family start anew. I sat there, silent, listening to my son talk about money as if he were selling back a worn-out relationship. I looked at his face, the face I once held close, whispering lullabies, and felt nothing but emptiness. In that moment, old memories flooded back. I remembered Christmas Eve spent alone under an undecorated tree, waiting for a call that never came. Birthdays where I blew out candles myself, bought myself flowers. Long, freezing nights when my heart ached for my son, clutching his old sweater. I'd lived through those days, alone, without Andrew, without a word of care. No card, no call, no sign I still existed in his mind. And now, when it suited him, he appeared, like a stranger claiming a share of an inheritance he shed no tears to earn. I took a deep breath, feeling the room compress around me. Looking straight into Andrew's eyes, my voice was calm, but each word was a nail driven home. You didn't lose me, Andrew. You just didn't need me, and now, I don't need you either. No shouting, no tears, just the truth, simple as a sharp blade. Andrew froze, his hands, lightly tapping the table, stilled. I saw in his eyes, for the first time, genuine panic. But I didn't give him a chance to cling. I stood, slung my worn purse over my shoulder, and walked out of the cafe, leaving behind the table, the chair, and a grown man sitting there, dazed as if he'd just lost something he never truly valued. That day, I cut contact completely, blocked his number, sealed off every channel. Not out of anger, but because I realized something I hadn't dared admit for 26 years. Love isn't an obligation. Love isn't something I have to beg for or buy. I owed no one anything. No longer had to live to prove I deserved love. No longer had to brace against the shadow of the past. For the first time, I lived for myself. No apologies. No regrets. No looking back. I didn't expect anything after that meeting. As I walked away from the cafe, I told myself, that's it. I'd done what was right for me, and the rest, I left to time. For weeks after, my life returned to its quiet rhythm. Mornings, I'd wheel my bike out of the garage, ride around the park. Afternoons, I'd brew tea, read under the sunlit porch. No more waiting for a phone call. No more fragile hope that someone would remember me. I thought, maybe Andrew would choose to forget me again. And strangely, this time, I was ready to accept it without heartbreak. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. One evening, as I watered newly planted flowers in the yard, a familiar car pulled up to the gate. Andrew stepped out, empty-handed, his eyes no longer carrying the confident arrogance of our first meeting. Just a man who'd fought a brutal inner battle, now standing before me, raw and honest in a way he'd never been. I didn't open the gate right away. I just stood there, watching, waiting to see what he'd say this time. Andrew pulled a stack of papers from his coat pocket, old, crumpled. The letters I'd written him over the years, sent into the void. Letters his father had hidden, like stolen pieces of a child's memory. His voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. I read them all, Mom. He said that after our meeting, he felt so empty he couldn't sleep. Then, while sorting through his father's old things, the man he'd once trusted, he found a wooden box. Inside were all the letters I'd sent. Scrawled lines, full of love and desperation, written with my whole heart. Andrew stood there, choking up, offering no excuses, no blame. Just admitting, I was wrong. I was blind. I lost you and lost myself in those lies. I didn't run to embrace him. I didn't burst into tears like in the melodramas I'd seen. I just stood still, feeling the truth settle between us, like a stone dropped into a lake, sending slow, deep ripples. Forgiveness? Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's not just an apology and done. Forgiveness, for me now, is a journey, slow, requiring effort from both sides. I opened the gate, slowly, without haste. Andrew stepped in, saying nothing more, just walking beside me to the garden. We sat on the wooden bench under the blooming cherry tree. No need for many words. Some things, just presence is enough. I didn't promise to forget. I didn't rush to hand back trust like a cheap gift. But I told Andrew, in a calm voice, free of resentment, if you want to rebuild the bridge between us, you have to lay every brick yourself. And I'll stand here, watching. If you don't give up, maybe one day, I'll cross to the other side. Andrew's eyes were red, but this time, I saw no scheming in them. Just regret and a genuine longing to be loved, not with money, but with sincerity. And for the first time in so many years, I allowed myself to believe. Maybe some wounds, though they can't be erased, can heal, bit by bit. My life, after all, didn't turn into a sweet ballad like in books, but it became a gentle melody, simple, true, with no false notes. I didn't change my life's plans just because Andrew returned. I still booked the cross-country trip I'd long dreamed of. I visited small coastal towns, quaint villages in the Appalachians. I sat for hours by lakes, painting clumsy but free-spirited sketches, reclaiming the freedom I'd traded my youth to find. The compensation money, once thought to buy a chance at love, I now used to invest in myself. In small joys I'd never allowed myself before. A community art class. A baking course in the next town. A slow train ride through golden wheat fields, where I could lean against the window, letting the breeze caress my silver hair. I learned to love myself, not with empty reassurances, but with real actions. No longer living for others. No longer tying my existence to whether someone remembered me. Andrew, for his part, didn't vanish again. No more calls only when he needed help. No more hollow promises without action. He started showing up Sundays, bringing a homemade loaf of bread or wildflowers picked by the roadside. No demands. No expectations. Just being there. We didn't force anything. No one rushed to call it family like before. Our bond, like an old cloth, was patched bit by bit, patiently, clumsily, but sincerely. Sometimes, we sat across from each other on the old yard bench, sipping tea, watching the sunset, without needing to say a word. Those silences, to me, were worth more than 1,000 promises. One autumn evening, as the leaves turned fiery red, Andrew hesitantly asked, "Mom, have you ever truly forgiven me?" I set my tea down, looked straight at him. My voice was steady, no lingering anger, just the simplest truth. I've forgiven you, Andrew, but I won't forget. And I hope you don't forget how I lived to reach this day. I saw his eyes well up, but he nodded. No arguing, no excuses. And in that moment, I knew, finally, he understood. Love, the love I'd given him my whole life, isn't free, not something to take when needed and discard when done. That love demands respect, nurturing, with sincerity, patience, and the smallest daily actions. Now, sitting by my window, the sunset gilding my small room, I feel more at peace than ever. Not because I have my son back, but because I have myself, whole, resilient, complete. If anyone asks, I'll just smile and say, I lost so much to learn a simple truth. True love is never a given. It must be cultivated with respect every day, every moment. And perhaps it's because of that I truly know what happiness is. Not given by others, but built by myself, brick by brick, tear by tear, with every hesitant smile in the twilight. If your child came back for money, what would you do? Does forgiveness require conditions? Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe independence and self-respect are the greatest treasures.